Welcome to another online lecture in advanced networking. In this lecture series, we are mainly looking at various concepts and implementations around building sort of enterprise scale networks and mainly focusing on routing and switching side of things. So in today's lecture, we are going to be looking at switched networks. This is about how packets are going to be sent through larger networks, various active components, and how they pass through such networks. And as previously, the topic areas that may be covered today may have been something that you have touched upon in a previous course, but we will have a bit more detail later on, adding upon to that knowledge. So one of the things that we need to understand is in which sort of context that we are thinking about these networks. So there are a number of things happening. One is the networks are becoming larger and more things are becoming interconnected. And when we say, and even from an enterprise corporate perspective, it is very common these days to have organizations spread across larger geographical regions and all of them still belonging in the same network. So it's not that a single organization is going to be located within a single building. It is going to be number of different locations, even different cities or countries is practical. So with that type of a networking environment, we also want those things to be a lot more reliable, a lot more secure, and we should want to have those networks. And what we mean by that is whenever some things need to be done, it should be able to do that. So building secure networks, building reliable networks, like with redundancy and so on. So these are also some of the things that we will be thinking about. So, and when we also think about what are the sort of different type of network traffic that we will be focusing on, again that is going to be from various sort of applications. It could be web traffic, it could be video traffic. So again, we have a number of varieties of traffic that we will be handling through the networks that we'll be building. So when we say switched networks, what we are talking about here is, say we would start from like some computers at a particular part of the network, and they may want to communicate to some other computers at a different part of the network. So in this one, what we are essentially trying to do is trying in some ways to send the information from one end to the other. And the way switching networks work is they will have a number of components in between that we identify as the switches, and the traffic will be forwarded across the network passing through these devices. And the main thing to know about these devices is these devices don't do anything to the traffic that is passed on. They are just receiving information and then passing on to the next node, and that network of switches will be able to send traffic from one end of the network to the other. And one of the other things that we would see in a lot of enterprise environments these days is there's a lot of convergence of various communication technologies into a single network. So, for example, there used to be telephone lines, or there still are telephone lines, but there were telephone lines and there were separate networks for the telephone lines. Then there was the network, whatever connecting to the internet or connecting the various devices within an organization. So there was some networking capability. Then there would have been a separate network or a separate layer of cabling and so on to cater to, say, things like CCTV cameras and so on. So what we can see happening these days is a lot of these systems, a lot of these things are coming together into a common network. So most of the phones in most enterprise environments these days are becoming IP phones. So they are connected through the same network which the computers are connected to. Similarly, CCTV cameras and so on are also connected to the same network. Then additionally, we can have further like video conferencing in sort of boardrooms and so on. So a lot of other additional capabilities are also converged into the same network. So there are a number of advantages that we get from converging everything into a single network. The main thing being, now we don't have to have a variety of different infrastructures going around. So we don't have to run a new telephone line and new network line. We can just run a new network line if that is what is needed. So because of that, now we will have less sort of complexity and from the point of view of managing the enterprise environment. So that is happening a lot, and also that is sort of the landscape where we will be thinking about how we are doing or how we are implementing these switched networks. And another concept that we will be thinking about a lot in these networks is what is called a borderless network. So what do we mean by a borderless network is, say for example, we may have a location. So for example, if it is a university, the university may have a main campus located at a particular location, and it may have a number of buildings, and then those buildings and all the devices within those buildings are connected as part of a network. Then it can also have a number of other premises located elsewhere, and each of these premises can also have their own networks. Then what we would do is we would try to connect all these networks into a single network, and from the point of view of users, say for example, a user in say the main campus here will be able to communicate with a user here as if they are part of the same network. So we will enable networks in such a manner that even though they are physically separated across multiple sites, they will be seen as a single larger network that we would have. So a simple example that you may be familiar with is like when you are moving around different premises of the university campus, different campus sites, you still would be able to use the same wireless networks. In all those places, the same wireless network is being provisioned, and you log in and authenticate in a similar manner, and you are able to use the same network. So we bring in all these networks together, and by extension we will also bring in all the sort of management of all these networks also to a centralized sort of environment. So that is also something that happens a lot, and that is also something again what we would be trying to build, or what we would be thinking about when we are building these larger networks, how those can be scaled up into larger environments, multiple locations, and so on. So when we are thinking about these borderless networks, we think about a particular thing. That is how we are going to structure within a site, for example. So the one part is how multiple sites are connected. So they are normally connected through the internet or some dedicated private connectivity. So that is one side. But then internally to a particular site, again we will have a particular architecture of how we build these things, and we call it a hierarchical switch network, a hierarchical switch network that we build within a within an organizational environment. So what we would have is we would have a layered approach. So we would have a number of layers that are doing different tasks. So we say, for example, we start with the routers that will communicate to the outside world or the other networks that would be there. But then from the switch network point of view, again we will have core layer with core switches, distribution layer, and access layer. So with each of these layers, they will do different tasks. And building a network like this, and one of the other things that you will be seeing here is like we have a duplication of things that exist there. So we have multiples of the same thing. So again, what we are trying to do here is we are breaking the functionality into multiple layers. So not building everything into a single device. Say for example, when you think about a smaller network at home or a very small office, you normally sometimes only have a single active network component, a wireless access point, which is also a router and a switch. So everything is built into one. But when we go sort of scale up into sort of larger enterprise environments, what we would prefer to have is multiple components doing separate things. So when things needs to be changed, when there are failures and so on, it can be easily managed. So we will break these components based on what is the role that they are playing, what is the task that they are assigned to. Then we will have separate components doing those separately. And then we'll try to build redundancy by having multiple components in parallel. So if one of those things fail, we can go with the other one. And that will enable us to sort of say, for example, we may start with the organization, a smaller size organization, and then we may be adding more and more users. So then by building it like this, we can connect more and more components, replace components as needed, and we will be able to expand the networks in a more reliable manner. So the three main layers that we would have in such a hierarchical organization is, the first layer is what we call the access layer. So access layer is the part where it is connecting to the end user. So it is the one that is directly connecting to the end user. So for example, if there's a switch to which you are normally connecting your computer directly, or if it is a wireless access point that is connected to, that is the access layer. So you are whatever the end nodes or the users are, the next part of the access layer. Then we will have what is called a distribution layer. So distribution layer is normally the role of the distribution layer is it sits between the core layer and the access layer, and it is the one that is responsible for managing like access across multiple. Say for example, what we may have is we may have a building that has a number of floors, and within each floors we may have a number of labs, for example, and each of them have their own switch, own access switch. So access layer will be at the very end where users are connected. Now then we will bring all these things together into a distribution layer. So now all of those are connected together, and at that point we will be looking at certain things like broadcast domains and so on. So that at that level, those things will be combined as well. So again, by having these distribution layer switches, they may sometimes have additional capabilities of being able to route or manage traffic only at that level. So what we may do is sometimes we may have, say, the access layer. A lot of these devices are connected there, and if the distribution layer is here, and if there is a traffic that needs to go between these devices, it can easily go just through the distribution layer. It doesn't have to go above and pass, depending on how the network is set up. Then we have the last one is the core layer, and that is the one that is going to build, or that is going to facilitate the backbone of the network. So everything else will be connected back to the core layer, and that is the one that is going to connect to the routers onwards. So the routers will be connected to the core switches, and then the core layer will be connected to other layers. And one of the other things that you may observe in sort of smaller networks is sometimes we may collapse, or we may combine the core and distribution layer into a single switch as well, or single set of switches as well. So instead of having a core layer and a distribution layer, we may have that combined as well, because the advantage of having them separate is more useful in larger networks. So if our network size is comparatively smaller, we may want to go with a combined approach there. So by having our network architectured as a hierarchical network, we get a number of advantages. So one is, it is more flexible, and like even from establishing or expansion point of view, but also management point of view. So by having these separated like this, we may be able to, say for example, have extra level of security. So we may be able to separate parts of the network physically if we want, or like logically, that is what we needed, but some level of additional controls can be implemented. We can say, for example, if a device fails, we may have a backup device that can cater to that at that point. Or alternatively, say if a particular device becomes older, we may be able to replace that with a newer device. So a lot of advantages, not just in terms of setting up the network, but also in an ongoing manner. So from management point of view, from expansion point of view, from reliability point of view, we will get a number of advantages when we build these switch networks in sort of this hierarchical organization. So that is what we would try to do in most enterprise applications as well. And then when we think about building a switch network within an organizational environment, one of the things that we will be thinking about is choosing the switches, which is a suitable switch for us to have. Then again, for that, we will think about a number of things. I mean, a primary concern could be the cost or the budget that is allocated for that particular network infrastructure. So that will dictate to some extent what is the type of switch that we may be able to afford. Then we may also think about port density. So what we mean by port density is a switch will have a set number of ports that can be used to connect a set number of devices. So then, for example, if we are building a laboratory and that laboratory has 40 computers, and all of them needs to be have wired connection to a switch, then the switch that we would want to install in that laboratory must have more than 40 ports, or we may need to have two different switches, or we may have to combine two switches together, or we may need to have a single switch that has more than 40 ports, like a 48 port switch is something suitable. So again, that is something that we'll have to think about depending on the application. Then, as these devices are sort of available all the time type devices, or they are switched on all the time and they need to be working all the time, we will think about power usage, for example, reliability, for example, because we may want them to work sort of forever in a reliable manner without any sort of issues relating to that. And in certain environments, we may also have to think about speed. For example, what is the speed that a port can support? Is it a 100 Mbps, or is it a gigabit, or is it a 10 gigabit? So what is the speed that can be supported by the switch? And that again will depend on what is the type of traffic that we are routing through that network. So if that network is just carrying, say, basic computational tasks like office environment, no video, no audio streams and so on, it may be okay to have a 100 Mbps switch. But if you want to have more higher bandwidth traffic that is happening, we may want to go up in higher port speeds and bandwidth. Then we also will think about scalability, because like say we may start with a smaller switch, and then if you want to add another switch or another set of users into the same environment, how easily we can add another switch. Either we replace it with a larger switch, or we add another second switch and connect those two together. So again, these are some of the considerations that we will be thinking about when we are tasked with choosing switches. So here we are thinking about the physical devices of switches. In terms of purchasing point of view. So this is again something you may have to think about, not just thinking about buying the highest priced, or like the one with the largest number of ports may not be the ideal way to go about it. You may have to think about what is the most suited one and what are the sort of connectivity capabilities that it may have. Are there any questions on things that we discussed so far? So now let's look at how switching works. So far we looked at what are sort of the differences in sort of different advantages and why we may want to use switch networks, and how we may build a hierarchical layered switched architecture. So now let's look at how the actual switching works from a technical point of view, in terms of how packets are being forwarded, frames are being delivered and so on. So the first thing that a basic switch would have is what is called, it would have a number of ports. So these are the places where a new device will be attached to the network. So they will be connected like that. Then each switch will also have what is called a port table, and that port table will identify what is the device that is attached to, or what is the destination that can be reached through that port. Say for example, if you send something through the connection on port 1, it will go to EE. If you send something through port 3, it will go to BA. So that is a table which would identify what is the device or the destination that is attached to that particular port. So then what we would have here is we would first identify, say, a new information or new packet would arrive at a particular port. So say, for example, a new packet arrives at port 1. So a new one arrives at port 1. Now the switch will go into the table and see what is the destination for that particular one, and that one identifies EA as the destination. Then it will see what is EA, and EA is located through or can be reached through port 4. So then it will take that information and send it through the connection on port 4. So that is the basic way a switch would work. And as you may already know, layer 2 switches of the OSI layer 2 switches would use MAC addresses as this destination address. So this destination address will be defined by the MAC address of the device that is attached to that. So that would be the identifier, and any frame that is coming into the switch will identify what is the desired MAC address that it is looking for. So now when we think about how these various nodes are going to be connected into a switch, so for example, we have a number of nodes here, and all of them are attached to a switch through a port in the switch. So what we sometimes may have is, we may also have redundant links. So like if it is only a single switch, so now these links, these are connected directly to the switch. But if we have another switch, for example, here, and some of these switches may be interconnected, and they may have redundant pathways as well. So it's not just going to be a single pathway, it could be a number of pathways that we can have. Say, for example, we have a node here, and so for a device that is located here to reach a device that is located there, it may now have a number of possible pathways. So for example, it can go to this switch, then this switch, then this switch and there, or it could go to this switch and then here and there. So we will have a number of redundant pathways or possibilities for things to be going in a larger network, because it's not going to be just a single switch in the middle. So there will be some devices attached to a switch, but then we are also going to have a number of other switches to which other devices are attached, and communication needs to happen across these switches. So when we have it like that, we need to figure out how we are going to send information across these switches. And to do that, we have a number of switching technologies. One is called circuit switching, and the other one is called packet switching. Again, this may be something that you may have covered previously. Is that the case? But anyway, we will be looking at them in a bit more detail. So the first way that we would do switching is called circuit switching, and the main sort of idea behind this is we would first need to have a dedicated pathway that is allocated to us to do the communication. So what we mean by that is, say for example, we have a node or a device here, and we have another node or a device here. So these are the two devices that need to communicate. So we need to establish a communication in between these two. Then we have a number of switches in between. So these switches are through which this traffic has to pass through. So what we would try to do is, say we would establish a connection through here, and first we will establish a connection and then we will use it dedicatedly. That pathway will be dedicated to that communication throughout the time. Then for example, if we have, say, another device that we need to connect to the network, so we have another device here and another device on the other end as well, and if these two need to connect to, we will have to go again and establish a new connection, a separate connection that can also be dedicated to those two devices. So we will have dedicated lines. So this is very similar to sort of old school POTS telephone lines or PSTN telephone lines, where that connectivity is only dedicated to a single connection at a particular point in time. So there are a number of steps that we would take in sort of establishing a circuit switch communication. So first we will have to go and establish a link. So what we would do is we would go from one switch to the other. For example, if it is connected through a number of switches, we'll first go and first allocate this connection. Then we will allocate this, this and this. And once we allocate all the connections from start to end, now that link is ready. Now that circuit is complete. So then that can be used for any sort of data connection or data transfer that we may need to do. And once the data transfer is finished, we will disconnect from the circuit. So that is how we will go from one end to the other. So what needs to happen is, if say for example a device on one end needs to communicate with the other one, it needs to know all the information on how to reach the other one already. So it has to initially find out the route to the destination before communication can start happening. So the first link establishment or circuit establishment needs to happen first before any communication can start. So with this approach, we would see a number of disadvantages. The one is it can be very inefficient. So say if we establish a connection, so we establish a connection between these two nodes, and that is a dedicated connection that is allocated for them. But if they are not using that link all the time, then that is going to be wasted resource. Say, if they are going to be constantly sending some information from each other, then it is okay to have that link active all the time. But if not, we will be wasting that capacity without sending or receiving any traffic. Then when we think about delay, we would have a delay in terms of initially establishing a communication. So for example, we may have to go through every part of the network to first create this circuit that is dedicated to that connection. Then only we can start communicating. So there will be a delay at that initial stage. But then once a circuit is established, then we may have actually comparatively low data delay, because at every node there's no comparison happening, because like any switches in between, now that connection path is established. so they can be directly forwarded onto. So this is primarily switch network, circuit switch networks were primarily developed for the use in telephone networks. So like when sort of old school telephone networks came about to be, they were switched networks. In the very sort of earlier days, it was like physically people would be doing switching. There used to be what is called a switch room. So you would call the switch room and you will say you have to call another person in another city, for example. Then they will switch from that switch room to that other city. Then there they will connect to the other person at the other end. So then establishing that physical connection before the two ends can talk. Then it's still in a lot of PSTN networks, still that establishing of circuit happens. But it can also be used for data networks. But the main difference is in a voice network. Say for example, if we call someone, we are most likely going to be talking on that line continuously. It's like a continuous communication happening there. Whereas on a data network, most data communications don't work like that. So it's not that you are continuously sending something. For example, if you are browsing the internet, if you are looking at a website, you may load the website, you may send a request for a website, that website may load, then you may spend some time just going through the website without doing any communication. Then you may click another link and then it may communicate again. So depending on the type of the network, we may have different different requirements, and data networks are most commonly very different to the voice networks, and especially when comparing to the capacity or the usage of the available channel. So when we think about packet switching, there are a number of disadvantages or problems that we would have in circuit switching first, and that is a reason why we would go for packet switching. First, circuit switching is primarily designed for voice networks, so it is the underlying principles are to cater to that. Then resources are dedicated to a particular call or particular connection, and that may be not desirable when we are thinking about data connections, because there may be significant inefficiency of them being not utilized. And the connectivity or this rate of communication has to be same in a circuit switch network, because it established a single circuit connected between both ends. So that also means they have to communicate at the same data rate. Again, that may not always be desirable or possible in data network, because different applications may produce and receive information at different rates. So packet switching is designed to address these problems. So what we would have in packet switching is, we would have the both ends here, and between the both ends we will have a network, and from the point of view of the end nodes, they forward things into that network and then they receive things back from the network at the other end. They are not bothered about what's happening within the network, within the packet switch network. Whereas in circuit switching, we wanted to have a dedicated line, dedicated connection. In packet switching, we are not concerned about that. We are mainly thinking about how we break this information that we need to send into smaller packets, sending it into the network, and afterwards it's received back and composed into a common message again. So with packet switch networks, the basic thing is we will break any data to be transmitted into short packets. So if we want to send a larger piece of information, we'll break that into smaller pieces and we will send them one by one. Then So then it will be a series of packets that is going to be sent from the other end. Then each packet will also have some additional information to identify where it needs to go, like routing information, where it needs to go, and some other information again. So you may recall studying about like these packet headers and frame headers and so on. So that is what we are talking about here. So in addition to the data portion, they also have a number of things related to managing how they are going to go through the destination and so on. And one of the other things that we will do in packet switch networks is what is called store and forward. So instead of just having a direct connection and continuously sending information across as we would do in a circuit switch network, in a packet switch network, each of the switches in between will receive the information, and they will maybe store that and then forward. So they may receive that into a buffer and then they will store that. And that what this enables is we can have two separate speeds at two ends of a switch. So it may receive information much faster, but it can temporarily store that here and then forward it at a lower speed if the receiving device is receiving them in a lower speed. So that is also an advantage that, or a difference that we will have in packet switch networks. So when we think about the advantages of packet switch network, the first one is we are going to be utilizing the line more efficiently, because now when we think about the connection between the two switches, this connection is now going to be utilized by a number of different devices that are connected at both ends. We are not dedicating this line for a single connection. That line is going to be connected by a number of nodes that are connected there. And the other advantage that we will have is we will be able to utilize data rate conversion. So for example, if this device is sending things or receiving things at 100 Mbps and this one can go up to 1000, then again this one can only do 100, we may be able to still manage that speed or data rate differences, and because we will be utilizing what is called store and forward. And one of the other advantages is in circuit switching, if that resource is allocated or allocated in a dedicated manner, we will not be able to use that anymore because that is already allocated for that purpose. But in packet switching, we are not allocating any resource sort of in a for a particular connection. It is shared among all the connections, so all the connections can continue to use the resources in some manner. So even if there's a lot of traffic happening, all of the devices can use some part of the network continuously. We can still set some priorities if we want. So it's not just that everyone is going to crowd the network. We can still set certain things like priorities and so on in packets, and based on that we can improve certain responsiveness of certain applications and so on. But the main thing is it is going to be shared. The link is going to be shared by large number of devices. So then when we think about the switching and forwarding method, like how the packets are going to be received and switched and forwarded through a switch, again we can think about two approaches. One is called store and forward switch, the other one is called cut through switching. So with store and forward, what we would do is we would receive a packet from the source, and then we will store that locally first. So we will store that locally, then after it is being fully received and stored locally, then we will forward. Whereas in cut through, we will start receiving it, and after a while, even before we may finish receiving the packet, we will start forwarding it across. So it is more like a continuous approach, whereas here it is like one after the other, receive, store, and then forward. So if we think about store and forward, it has a number of features. Say that is, for example, it can do error checking. So what it would do is, say it would receive a packet, and once it receives that, here it can go into, say, the checksums that are available in the frame and see if every part of the data is received properly. Then if it is only received properly, then it would forward to the next node, next switch. So then next switch will also check for that and see if everything is okay in that connection, and then forward. So the advantage of doing this is, if for example the packet was corrupted in this connection, it can be dropped here itself. It doesn't have to reach the destination. It can be dropped here, and some alternative can be resorted there. Again, wherever it fails, it can be identified and that connection can be stopped or dropped. Then the other advantage with this type of an approach is we can receive the packets and store locally. So if we are receiving at a higher speeds, we can still store them here locally before we are forwarding them. So we can receive them all at a higher speed, store it locally, and then send them outwards in a lower speed. So we can do automatic buffering when we are connecting sort of mix of speeds with the switch or with the nodes that are attached. So this type of store and forward switching is sort of the most common switching, not just in sort of Cisco switches, but also in generally. That is sort of the common approach that will be used in most typical applications that we may come across. But then we also have what is called cut-through switching. So in cut-through switching is the main sort of difference is they are going to be forwarded even before the full frame is received. So the problem with that is we may end up forwarding frames that may have errors, because now in this one we don't have a way to check the checksum, because when we have started to forward the first part of the frame, that checksum at the end may not have been received. So we may not be able to do error checking when we are forwarding using cut-through switching. Then another concept that we will come across when we are thinking about these switched networks is what is called collision domains. So let's think about say a computer that is connected to a switch. So if we think about a computer that is connected to the switch through this connection, so now a number of things can happen. Both of these devices may want to send some information. So both of them may want to send some information. So what we would, if we have, say, a single connection and then both ends needs to communicate, there are few ways it can happen. So one is we have what is called a duplex connection. So when we have a duplex connection, both ends can communicate at the same time. So if that is possible, if we can establish a duplex connection between a switch and a device, we will do that, and both the parties can communicate, and we will not have any collision. We will be able to eliminate collisions if we use duplex mode connection. So if there's duplex mode is not possible, so most switches, what they would do is they would do what is called a auto negotiation. So when you go and plug into a switch, it would do an auto negotiation to identify if that link can be used as a full duplex connection. So both directions can be communicating at the same time. If that is possible, then the switch will function in a full duplex mode. But if it identifies that it cannot do full duplex connection, it would operate in what is called a half duplex mode. And in half duplex, the main thing is only one device can send things at a time. So then what we will have to do is we will have to see if there is any collision happening when things are being communicated. To manage that, we would have what is called a collision domain. So with that, we will be able to see if these two nodes are part of a collision domain, but that is, they are connected through a half duplex connection, and we would manage the connection accordingly. So in most cases, the switch will try to see if full duplex connectivity can be established, and if it can be established, this won't be a problem. Another thing that we would identify in switch networks is what is called broadcast domains. So what our broadcast domains are, say if a switch is connected to a number of nodes, we would identify a number of these interconnected nodes, or sometimes even number of nodes interconnected across number of switches as what is a broadcast domain. So when we send packets or frames as broadcast packets, it will be forwarded to all these nodes in that broadcast domain. So if they are connected together, so these broadcast packets means they need to reach to all the nodes that exist. So all those nodes that exist in that type of connectivity is what we would identify as the broadcast domain. Why we need to think about this is, say if we extend the broadcast domain across switches, for example, say if the broadcast domain is within a switch, if the broadcast domain is within this switch only, whatever the broadcast traffic will only pass through this switch and to all the devices here. But if we extend the broadcast domain across multiple switches, now what will happen is a broadcast from here will have to reach all these devices at the other end. So all the devices here will have to receive the broadcast traffic. So then what we would end up having is this the connection between the switches is going to be flooded or overwhelmed by this broadcast traffic. So for that reason, we would not prefer to have broadcast domains extended much longer or much larger networks, because that is something we would want to avoid, because that may be unnecessary congestion in those common connections. So when we think about network congestion, like not just goes from broadcast domains but also from multiple nodes connected, say if we have two switches and each of them are connected with multiple nodes at the end, and if there's only a single connection between these switches, that particular link in between is going to be significantly there's a significant congestion in that link, because all these nodes are communicating with communicating only through that particular single link. So we will try to do a number of ways to improve that. One is having full duplex connections. If we have full duplex, then we can again improve quite a bit, because if we have half duplex, we can only send data in one direction, so we have to wait until we can communicate through the other direction. So it will slow down things. So we would want to have full duplex when possible. Then from the point of view of switches also, we will think about what the port density of those switches, and the frame buffers that are there in those switches, port speeds that are in those switches. Then also thinking about what happens inside the switch. So because each switch will spend some time to receive a frame, figure out where to send that frame to, like comparing to the table that it has in terms of where to send that frame to, and then forwarding that frame. So the internal switching can also be a bottleneck, so that can also be improved. And one of the ways that we can sort of improve that is having suitable devices of suitable sizes and with appropriate connections. Then we can avoid or we can improve the tendency to have congestions in these switch networks. So are there any questions on things that we discussed so far? Okay, so now when we think about packet switching, we can think about, so basically whenever a packet is received or whenever a message needs to be sent, it will be broken into packets, and those packets are forwarded or sent out into the network and then forwarded onwards. So now what happens at each of these nodes in the network, what happens when they receive these packets, and how they are going to do that packet switching and forward that traffic across that network. To do that packet receiving and delivering across the network, there are two approaches. One is called a virtual circuit approach, and the other one is called a datagram approach. So when we think about virtual circuit approach, what we have is, it is somewhat we can think of this as somewhat similar to circuit switching. In circuit switching, what we had was, we established a dedicated circuit in between the switches. So in between the nodes through the switches, we established a dedicated network. In virtual circuit, in packet switching, what you have is, it is still packet switching, so it can pass through any switches, but we would establish a virtual switch. For example, what we would do is, we would identify through which switches this packet has to pass through. So in a way, it becomes a virtual link that is sort of specified as to, okay, pass through this switch, this switch, this switch. But it is not a dedicated link, it is still a packet, but the path of the packet will be predefined. So each packet will have an identifier to say what is that virtual circuit that it needs to follow, and then the packets will be followed through that type of a that virtual circuit. So what we have here is the route or the path routing between the stations will be set prior to the data transfer starting, very similar to how we would do in circuit switching. But the main difference is that link that is there can still send other packets as well. It's not that path, that link is going to be dedicated to this connection, but this connection will have a set pathway where it will reach. So what we have here is, we will first go and establish this as the circuit that we want to go to, and there it would be any packet that is being sent will follow the same route that we have here and take that one and go. So it is not dedicated resources. These resources are not dedicated or reserved for that virtual circuit, and it is still going to do store and forward type packet switching, but we will specify the pathway through which this can go. The alternative that we have is what is called datagram, and this one doesn't specify that. So each packet received at a particular switch, so if it is receiving a number of packets, and each packet received at a switch can be forwarded through any path. So some packets can go through here and some packets can go through that link. Then even further down, they can, depending on the network availability, congestion and so on, each switch can make its own decision as to where it needs to go. So the issue with this approach is, or the advantage of with this approach is, they can take any possible route. So there's no dedicated pathway set here. They can take any route as they go along the various switches. But the problem is, they may sometimes be received out of order, because say for example, if this link is much faster, maybe the last packet may be received first and the other ones may be coming later. So we cannot control the order in which these packets are going to be received. And sometimes, say for example, if part of the network fails somewhere, we may have some packets being missing in the network. Because again, in virtual circuit, we either may lose all the packets or we may receive all of them in the correct order. Here we may have that as well. So what will have to happen is, at the receiving end, we may have to reconstruct the packets as they are received and use that. So at the receiving end, we may have to reconstruct them in the order that they need to be. So we have to do that there. So this is the one that is normally used in how we are communicating in the internet. So most of the data communication that we do will use datagram type packet switching. So if we compare virtual circuits and datagrams, in virtual circuits we can have what is called sequencing and error control. So because we can sequence the packets in a particular order, and then we may be able to, if certain things fail at a particular point, we can request for retransmissions and so on based on that. And at the point of packet forwarding, the decision of where it needs to go to is already specified in the virtual circuit, so that packet forwarding can also happen much faster. But the problem is, if that preset pathway fails, if that preset pathway cannot be used anymore, then the reliability can go down, because they cannot renegotiate to go through a different switch, because that is already preset, because from the source to the destination. Whereas in datagram, there's no initial setup that needs to happen, and even if nodes fail, they can find alternative nodes and they can reach it. For example, if one part of the network is more congested, it can choose a different switch and try to reach the destination like that. So this one identifies a number of differences that you may see between these circuit switching, datagram packet switching and virtual circuit packet switching. There are some sort of commonalities you may see across them, and quite a few differences. So that is just a summary of the differences that we would be able to identify for your reference. So that brings us sort of to the end of discussion on switch networks. We will be looking at how we are going to configure, for example, from the point of view establishing these switch networks and setting up these switch networks in the coming week, and we will be discussing about those in a bit more detail. But the main thing to remember is switch networks are going to be an essential part of any sort of enterprise network that we will establish, and then we'll have to make a number of decisions in terms of how we are going to architecture these switch networks and how they are going to be structured in terms of how many nodes are connected, what are the different layers that we are going to have, access distribution core layers, and what are the different switches that we may be having in between them, and how internally the switches are going to function. And we will be discussing a continuation of this in the coming week as well. So in terms of an assignment for this week, there will be not a standard packet tracer activity kind of an assignment will not be there, but there is an assignment on LMS available to you, which is a activity that you will have to do. It is a sort of a study and a discussion type of an activity. So it will not be part of the standard continuous assessment marks, but it will, if you choose to submit that, you will be able to get bonus marks. So that bonus marks can be used towards continuous assessment and so on. That is a thing that you can do. But also the questions and discussion points in that activity are most likely will also be used in an examination point of view and so on. So again, it is something that is ideal if you do that. But again, as I said, it is not a compulsory assignment, so it is up to you whether you do that or not. But there are certain advantages in you doing that. So it is a decision that you can take. So that is the end of the lesson on switched networks. Are there any questions that you have? So if there are no questions, we may conclude the lesson for the day, and see you next week around same time. And in the meantime, if there are any questions, doubts, anything, you can always reach out to me and I'll try to assist you through those. Until next time, thanks for joining for this lesson. See you. Bye.